Is the second video in the Stellar Relationships video course called Venus, the Indicator of Love, Desire, and Romance. And this is very important because obviously if we're going to be talking about relationships, we have to talk about the indicator, and that is Venus. Very important. You see it says love, desire, and romance. It's funny how she indicates those things, but actually even more than that. But we have to always start with Venus when we talk about relationships. So we not only does she do that, in many ways you can easily say that Venus has what we all want, and that's happiness. From sensual pleasure, which is happiness through the physical body, through natural beauty and love, that includes things like art and the appreciation of aesthetics, appreciation in general, to devotion and a higher power, are all related to Venus. So Venus does all of those things, but they're not separate. They're actually different parts in the same process. In fact, all of the planets are divine energies. They're really the divine energies within us, but Venus is the divine energy within us that's related to love, pleasure, happiness, and enjoyment. So her energy eventually teaches us to enjoy life without wasting all of our energy pursuing personal desires. You know, the selfish pursuit of these desires leads to the disrespect of others, and the thing that Venus really brings out in us is wanting to compromise with other people, wanting to honor another person's wishes equal to our own. And this is what happens in love. You know, love extends us. Those desires to merge with another person extend us in ways that we wouldn't otherwise do. The first part of relationships is related to physical desire and some sort of passion. You know, we think somebody's hot, for lack of a better way to put it. And if there's no attraction there, then we're not going to be interested. It's not going to keep our imagination. So desires aren't bad. In fact, it's the force and power of that desire that keeps us going back, facing that difficult part of ourselves. Because really, what we learn in relationships is to face parts of ourselves that are not so easy to face. And in so doing, we become extended beyond what we would normally become extended to. And so the real deeper lesson in relationships is compromise, which I didn't really realize that before I started studying astrology. Most people think the thing that the soul is learning in relationships is love, for instance. But love is actually taught through children and things that we love selflessly. Relationships aren't selfless. They're actually transactional in nature. We want our desires fulfilled, and we also want to fulfill the other person's desires. But that's very different than the parent-child relationship, which is about selfless love, serving the child and the needs of the child without expecting anything in return. That's where we learn that type of selfless love. And if we bring that into a romantic relationship, there's going to be suffering, because eventually it'll start to feel like abuse. We can't just completely selflessly love our partner at first. Perhaps our love relationship will grow into that, but it's only going to grow into that after there's mutual respect. The adult relationship is a transactional relationship, and Venus is the planet that brings the energy through us to negotiate fairly, to establish boundaries, to play within those boundaries. And a lot of that energy comes through learning how to compromise, learning how to respect another person's values equal to our own, not always having to win, being able to compromise, but yet still hold a line of integrity within ourselves that doesn't feel that it's being abused. This is a difference between the moon and the Venus energies, astrologically. So it's the energy, as I say, that allows us to compromise, but it may also be a shallow compromise to simply get what we want in the moment. And this leads to regret later, and the confusion of our partners or of ourselves. Because when we first feel that magic of Venus, that love, we're so enamored, we feel so good. Venus has come into our heart and we feel this love, and we don't get to feel that so often. It's that magic. And so what do? We start overlooking the things that we don't like about the person. We start selling short the things that we want because we want to make things work. It may be a sort of shallow compromise that just because we want to keep getting what we want and we don't want to make an issue. So we try to deal with things. And then as the relationship goes forward, those little things become bigger and bigger until one day we start realizing that that magic has worn off, and those things that seem so little are now very big, and we didn't pay attention to them early on. So as we get more experience, we learn not to sell ourselves down the drain in the beginning and notice those things that don't add up, rather than sell them short. And again, this is how Venus extends us, though, because we really question ourselves. Once we get this great desire, we start to question all those little nitpicky things that we have about people, because we want to keep getting the good stuff. But we have to be careful. It's this fine line between honoring our desires and being open to another person. So it's that pleasure principle that pulls us into relationships and captures our imagination. Later in love, Venus shows our capacity to honor another's wishes as equal to our own. Like I said, we'll start to try to compromise, and then we'll see if the other person compromises as well. But it's got to be fair, and we have to feel like we're in a partnership, or else Venus feels unsatisfied and she'll stop compromising and start laying down the law a little bit more and trying to negotiate. But eventually what we try to do is honor another person's wishes equal to our own. And most of the time when we first become in love, we sell our own desires short in the beginning, just because we want to keep experiencing the good stuff. We don't want to make problems. So it's that fine line between those two things. So it's important to know that a powerful Venus will enjoy life, yet not be addicted to the worldly pleasure, because ultimately Venus is trying to transform the worldly nature. So it's not just about experiencing sensual pleasure, or even experiencing love through the emotions and that sort of romance, because all that wears off. What happens eventually is we're trying to merge with everything, and Venus gives us the appreciation of all things. But the problem that we can have in the early part is that we just want that physical pleasure, not just with romance, but with all kinds of sensual pleasures. That's what Venus has in store for us. So our worldly, romantic, passion-filled idea of love must be transformed and elevated if we are to have bliss. And bliss is of the soul. You know, pleasure is of the body, and love, or passionate love, is of the heart and mind, but bliss is of the soul. It's the eternal nature of the soul, and Venus transforms that. Yet most of the time we're seeking passion, not bliss. As I say, passion is fleeting and causal, and of the body and mind. It has a cause and it has an effect. It has a beginning and it has an end. But bliss is eternal and of the soul. It has no beginning or end. It's the true nature of who you are. Whereas this is what happens in a relationship. We can lose ourselves and feel like, oh, this person is the reason I'm happy. I want to keep getting that good thing from them, so I won't pay attention to what's important to me. Or if they go away, they're going to take away my happiness. They're going to take away my pleasure. But what Venus is really trying to teach us when she comes into our life is that other person didn't create it from the outside. They just created a situation for you to experience a part of yourself that you don't always get to see. So first we learn that we can love one person. Then we learn that we can love everything. Love is eternal, and so are we. And this is how Venus teaches us. It's remarkable how much we learn in love and romance, because we learn how much we're able to compromise, how deep we can go. And once we learn that we can do that with one person, we start doing it with the world at large and then with ourselves. So Venus is that great magic in life that transforms the stimulation of the body into the passionate love of the mind, then into the bliss of the soul. So in this way, desire is not a bad thing. It's all a matter of what we are desiring. So we can allow that nature of Venus to lead us into the desire to enjoy another person, to compromise without selling ourselves short, and then eventually to allow our individual nature to merge with our cosmic nature. All these planets are energies that work through us. They're not outside of us. They're not separate from us. When I talk about Venus, I don't mean something outside of you. I mean the energy of love that moves through you. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Tell your friends about it. And if you haven't signed up, sign up in the form below so you can be notified of future videos. Have a great day.